Rebecca, are we ready to get started?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. Okay. Morning, everyone. I'm John Faust, Chairman of the Economic Advisory Commission, Fairfax County's Economic Advisory Commission, and welcome to today's meeting of the Economic Advisory Commission. Because this is virtual, we have to do the same routine that we've done in our last couple meetings with respect to some procedural requirements we have to meet. So I am going to begin that and ask for some help in a minute from Supervisor Stork if he's on the line. So to conduct this meeting wholly electronically, the Economic Advisory Commission needs to make certain findings for the record to evidence our compliance with all applicable laws. As a preliminary matter, FOIA requires us to ascertain the general location of each member participating remotely. I would ask that each EAC member note your general location in the chat box or send that information to Vance Sabella at vance.sabella@fairfaxcounty.gov. You can include your magisterial district or your general regions, such as Oakton, Reston, Lorton, etc. In addition, if you cannot adequately hear another member, please also so note that matter in the chat box so that the issue can be addressed. I am now, Supervisor Stork, are you on the line? I know he was planning on joining us. Most members of the Board of Supervisors are at a meeting of the VACO today. Is there another member of the Board of Supervisors on the line?
Yeah, happy to help them.
Supervisor Harity's here too.
Okay, Dahlia, if I will pass the virtual gavel to you, and I'm going to move that the Economic Advisory Commission certify that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this commission and the public to physically attend this meeting in person, and the usual procedures cannot be implemented safely or practically. As a result, I further move that the Economic Advisory Commission conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, excuse me, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 602-333-0032 and entering access code 167352. I so move.
Do we have a second?
You can
Seconded
second.
by Stephen Keat. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Your hands. Thank you. All those opposed? All those abstaining? All right, Chairman Faust, that passes without objection.
Thank you very much. And now we need to I finally move that the Economic Advisory Commission certify that the matters on its agenda today relate to the COVID-19 emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Commission's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. So moved.
Do we have a second? I see Taylor Chess has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, Chairman Faust, that passes without objection.
Very awesome. Thank you very much. I am now going to turn to Teresa Benincasa of the Economic Initiatives Department staff, who will give us some ground rules for how we participate in the meeting today. Teresa?
Thanks, Supervisor Faust. Just a couple of reminders about the meeting process. We're asking if you could please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking during the meeting. We would ask that you please use the raise hand icon if you have a question, and we will address questions. If you have a chance, please rename yourself so we understand and ensure that your full name is accurately listed. And just a reminder that this is a public meeting and it is being recorded. And as Supervisor Faust mentioned, we just need to collect the location. If you could indicate that in the chat, or if you're by phone, just send your information to Vance. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Teresa. So let me again welcome everyone to today's meeting. We've got a couple presentations that we'll have. We also hope to have plenty of time for discussion and questions from EAC members. Before I get started, we distributed a set of meeting summary. Does anyone have any changes or revisions to the meeting summary that was distributed with the agenda? If not, it will serve as a record of our last meeting of the EAC. So the first topic today is transitioning to 2022 economic shifts and opportunities to watch. We'll have presentations from Jason Elkubi, the Executive Vice President of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and Paula Sorrell, the Associate Vice President of Innovation and Economic Development at George Mason University. Following their presentations, EAC members will have the opportunity to ask questions of our presenters and to share thoughts and insights on the economic challenges and opportunities we should be prepared to address in 2022. This discussion about transitioning to 2022 will segue very nicely into the next topic we'll discuss as a committee today. And that is, we'll address how the Economic Advisory Commission might be most effective in 2022. We have some ideas, but we're seeking ways to maximize how we can benefit from the expertise and experience of commission members. Hopefully everyone has had the opportunity to participate in the survey that staff from the Department of Economic Initiatives prepared and circulated. Rebecca Maudry, director of that department, will present the results of the survey and lead a discussion of next steps for the commission, including obtaining your input on prioritization of topics that the EAC should consider and address in 2022. Now, there's, before we get started, I just want to, we want to hear from you, obviously. Appreciate the fact you take the time and effort to be on this call. Please feel free to put comments or questions into the chat when the speakers are making their presentations. After they've made their presentations, we'll open it up for discussion and live questions after both Jason and Paul have spoken. And then for live questions after both speakers, please raise your virtual hand and Rebecca Maudry will monitor and call on speakers in order of the questioning. So let's get started with the first presentation by Jason Elkubi, who serves as Virginia Economic Development Partnership Executive Vice President. He leads the organization's strategy and operations in collaboration with the president and CEO. And he directly oversees activities relating to economic competitiveness, international trade, incentives, research, and operations. Before joining BEDP, Jason was president and CEO of One Acadiana, a regional economic development organization based in Lafayette, Louisiana. And previously, he served as Assistant Secretary of Louisiana Economic Development, where he helped secure projects creating more than 63,000 new jobs, along with more than $28 billion in new capital investment. We particularly appreciate the fact that Jason's here with us today, given all the the activity that is occurring in Richmond around the Virginia Economic Development Partnership these days. So thank you, Jason, and please take floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. It is great to be with you. I'm excited to participate in this discussion with all of you. I want to thank you, first of all, for the great partnerships that VEDP enjoys in Fairfax County. We're especially grateful for the entire team at the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority, Victor and Kathy and Alex and other folks who are on the line, along with other friends and partners who are with us today, and also those that we're counting here in spirit. I've got, I think, only 10 minutes or so, so I'll be kind of brief in my remarks. I've prepared some slides that I'd like to share with you, and I'll dial those up now. Hopefully you can see those okay. I'd really like to focus on kind of three big things to set the table for this discussion. The first is to give you, based on the very latest data that we have, an update on recovery trends and shifts that have happened in the economy. I'll put particular focus on Northern Virginia, where you guys are situated. Also want to talk about, secondly, the overall outlook for the recovery from the pandemic. And then finally, I want to focus on some opportunities with special attention to things that are relevant to Northern Virginia and Fairfax County. So let's go ahead and get started. So in terms of where we are, so first of all, you should know that Virginia overall has performed better than the US in terms of unemployment rates since the very beginning of the pandemic. You can see that we both Virginia and the US sort of spiked in April of 2020, and that has steadily come down, with Virginia outperforming the US overall. Looking at the change in employment picture, what you're looking at right now is basically the peak of the pandemic. So this is like April or May of 2020, depending on when different regions peaked in terms of their employment change. You can see up here, Northern Virginia in sort of the April-May timeframe had lost nearly 11% of its jobs, was down about 157,000 jobs, which was pretty typical in percentage terms for the rest of the state. So let's look at where we are today. So you're looking at the latest data we have available from September of 2021. You can see that Northern Virginia still down about 6.3%. So basically a 6.3% lower employment level today than where you guys were pre-pandemic. That represents a loss of about 92,000 jobs in Northern Virginia. So still not back to baseline. These are statewide numbers, but I think you'd see something similar in Northern Virginia. Basically, what we're looking at is the breakdown of employment loss by sector. You can see that the sort of crosshatched lines here show the peak of the pandemic. The solid lines are where we are today. So you can see that most sectors are still down, with the losses overwhelmingly concentrated in leisure and hospitality and other services, including non-essential retail. I'll also draw your attention to the bottom. You can see that actually there are a few sectors, including professional and business services, transportation and utilities, and essential retail, that are actually up already as we recover from the pandemic. Also worth pointing out that unemployment assistance claims are continuing to trend downwards, basically slowly getting back to pre-pandemic levels. One of the things I wanted to point out, these are statewide numbers, but I think they're very relevant to Northern Virginia and to Fairfax. We still see quite a few folks who have lost their primary job, but what I really want to draw your attention to is this second line. We have, for the 200,000 or so people who are affected by either loss of job or involuntary reduction of hours, folks who aren't looking for a job but want a job. The biggest group appears to be those who have lost a secondary job. These are folks that we do not know a ton about, but what we can surmise based on what we do know is that, these are folks who are heavily concentrated in those service-related occupations that we saw as, kind of the concentration of economic impact on the prior slide. So a lot of folks who may not be showing up in unemployment data, but who are nevertheless seeing a significant loss of income and a detachment from the labor market. And as you look at what this looks like in terms of, breaking down across their hourly earnings, you can see actually for those who are earning more than $40 an hour, they never saw a big dip in terms of employment loss. In fact, only about 2.5% of those individuals were thrown out of work. These are folks who are actually up today. Those who are earning more than $40 an hour, we actually see more of those people employed today than we did pre-pandemic. You can see greater impacts for those who are in the $20 to $40 an hour range, although most of those folks are now back. But look at what's going on in the below $20 per hour wage rate. More than 30% of those people lost their jobs during the height of the pandemic, and still 5% of them, more than 5% of them are out of work today. What these numbers on the right show you is that these are overwhelmingly folks who have less than a bachelor's degree. These are also folks who are predominantly non-white or who are Hispanic, also a greater concentration of women in these lower wage rate workforce population than what you would see among higher income earners. So where are we going from here? I've put some numbers together drawing on the latest forecasts from Moody's economy.com, one of the leading forecasting firms. Basically what they're showing is that they expect Virginia overall to get back to our pre-COVID employment baseline in the second quarter of 2022, so about 6 months or so from now. When you look at this broken down by sort of the urban crescent, including Northern Virginia compared to the rural horseshoe, what we see is that looks like the urban crescent is really going to drive that recovery statewide, expected to get back to its pre-employment baseline by the fourth quarter of 2022. It's going to take, according to the latest estimates, Q4 of 2022. I misspoke a second ago. Looks like the rural horseshoe not expected to get back to its pre-COVID baseline until about 6 months later. Obviously, one of the big things we're concerned about is that if there's a national economic slowdown, a recession, particularly once Virginia overall recovers, that could really exacerbate the impacts of COVID-19 for rural areas of the state. Let's talk just very briefly about some of the opportunities to accelerate economic recovery, some of the big shifts that we are looking at. One of the first things that we should recognize is that when you look at the sectors for which Virginia is already strong, including Northern Virginia, I should say, including and especially Northern Virginia, as well as some of the sectors that are emerging and likely to benefit from the economic impacts of the pandemic, Virginia is very well positioned overall. And I would say Northern Virginia is particularly well positioned. Think about your strengths in things like cloud computing, data centers, some autonomous systems technology, e-commerce in general. Also, some of Virginia's other economic strengths show up here. Things like food and beverage processing in the Shenandoah Valley, commercial trucks and delivery vehicles, logistics and broadband. So a strong economic base, diversified and generally well positioned for healthy economic growth in a post-pandemic economy. There are four big opportunities that we really are keeping our eyes on. I think all of these are relevant to you guys in different ways. One is that we are seeing really a kind of a big shift in the supply chain, nearshoring and reshoring of manufacturing investment, opportunities to certainly capture much of that in Virginia with the right tactics. Secondly, we were already seeing a steady digitization of of all sectors of the economy. The pandemic has absolutely accelerated that. That's one of the places where Northern Virginia, as I think you all know, is best positioned to compete. Really, one of our leading regions in the country and in the world in many of these technologies. And so we expect that the pandemic's economic effects to accelerate all of that. Major transition, of course, has been the shift to telework. We expect some of that to be permanent, particularly in sort of a hybrid model. Obviously, this creates some new opportunities for rural areas and for small metros. It's also expected to create some shift in economic activity, residential patterns in urban areas where you can expect to see, the exurbs opening up a little bit more for folks who previously needed to be closer to the center of a metro area. And finally, and very significantly, a huge opportunity and also a huge challenge to retool and reskill Virginia's unemployed workforce for post-COVID career opportunities. I think it's important to recognize when we look at the breakdown of how the pandemic has impacted different sectors that in many cases, folks will not only not be able to go back to their previous job, in some cases, their occupation is not going to come back to sufficient levels in a reasonable time frame. And so an opportunity for them to retool and reskill and an opportunity to power the economic recovery through a workforce that has the opportunity to pivot if we provide them with that opportunity. As we think about the big drivers of what's going to help us grow, what's going to create economic opportunity, what's going to improve our business climate, we're really focused on building on some of our longstanding strengths as a Commonwealth. Certainly these show up in Northern Virginia and Fairfax County. Also considering how we can accelerate some of the recent advances we've made in things like broadband investment, particularly in rural areas, opportunities to connect workers with post-secondary education, meeting them where they are, providing wraparound services, helping to market the state, investing significantly in tech talent, as you guys are undoubtedly aware of in Fairfax, as well as some of the logistics and other fundamental factors. So some of the big things that we see as opportunities to improve as you look towards the top of the slide, the pandemic has laid bare the importance of early childhood education and investments in childcare to enable adults to stay in the workforce and to prepare the next generation. A big part of capturing many of these manufacturing opportunities will involve an investment in project-ready economic development sites, as well as some targeted tax changes to make us competitive. As the supply chain reshuffles globally, there's an opportunity for Virginia firms to help supply markets around the world that are looking to increase resiliency. And so we have an international trade plan that we are in the middle of implementing and look to accelerate that. Obviously, the big investment in broadband will help to provide connectivity for folks across the Commonwealth. We expect that to be near ubiquitous across the Commonwealth in the coming years. Continuing to invest in workforce connectivity programs like the Governor's G3 initiative, as well as some of the things that we are doing at VEDP with the Virginia Community College System to provide a comprehensive workforce solution customized to the needs of businesses that are creating a significant amount of jobs. And finally, doing more to tell the story of the incredible value proposition that Virginia offers to a range of different economic sectors that are well poised for growth. So just to give you a brief glimpse of the future, some of these things have direct economic impact on Fairfax County and Northern Virginia. Others will create economic opportunities for your companies and entrepreneurs. And finally, others are things that will impact the context that you'll be situated in the rest of Virginia in ways that could impact Fairfax and the rest of Northern Virginia. So first of all, I think as we look into the future, we're going to see nearly ubiquitous broadband. We're going to see an opportunity to buck America's rural decline trend, putting rural areas of the Commonwealth into positive economic territory. A big priority, I should mention, of our incoming governor, Also, growing opportunities in space, which with a growing commercial space sector on the Eastern Shore, gigawatts of solar power being delivered, gigawatts of offshore wind, more than $10 billion per year in data center investments. I think we can see that all the way into the future. Leading America in container port capabilities, really helping connect Virginia importers and exporters. Leading America in export orientation manufacturing wins, if we capitalize on some of the opportunities I shared earlier. Leading America in unmanned systems. Leading America in rural and small metro tech center opportunities. Leading America in computer science, with Northern Virginia being second to none here, built around this $1.1 billion tech talent investment program that we designed in partnership with many of you and others around the Commonwealth to invest in computer science as part of the Amazon HQ2 deal. Leading America in data science. Leading America in human capital development. Our big goal is to position Virginia as America's top state for talent. Northern Virginia, Fairfax County will be a hugely consequential and important partner in that. And I think if we can do the things that, half of the things that I've just listed in partnership, I think we will position Fairfax County and Northern Virginia and the entire Commonwealth to be very well positioned for a healthy post-pandemic economy, one that's great for businesses, one that's great for workers, and one that's great for families. Thanks for the opportunity to share this with you guys. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was outstanding. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure there will be questions when we get to that part of the presentations. But first, we're going to hear from Paula Sorrell, who is the Associate Vice President of Innovation and Economic Development at George Mason University. She oversees the Office of Technology Transfer, the federal and state programs that support small business, including the Small Business Development Center, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, 4 business incubators, the maker spaces, and entrepreneurship programming at Mason. Before joining GMU, Paula served as the Director of Economic Growth Institute at the University of Michigan. Previously, she served as Vice President of Entrepreneurship, Innovation, and Venture Capital for the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, overseeing $1 billion under management and $110 million in new programs and investments to build the state's entrepreneurial ecosystem during the Great Recession recovery. She has also held the senior marketing role at several early stage technology companies. So without further ado, Paula, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm really pleased to be here, and I've been on the job for 1.5 years now at Mason, and Fairfax County has been a wonderful partner throughout that time and really helped me get settled. So thanks for that. Next slide, please. So, this is a bit of an eye chart on the small screen, but this is just to give you an idea of what the Mason Enterprise Group looks like. Secretary Faust gave you an idea of what's in the portfolio. This is about 100 people in total, spread out throughout the Commonwealth. And a lot of that's because of the Small Business Development Center, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and a number of the other programs. So we have about 14 line items of early stage technology and small business support programs that we run, in addition to the incubators, and 2 that will be opening by the end of 2022. So all of that together, leads up to impact. So it's more than 10,000 small businesses we supported in fiscal year 2020. Our 2021 numbers are being finalized right now. They should be done in a couple of weeks. But we have a great portfolio where we are heavily supporting minority and women-owned businesses. So more than half of those, more than 10,000 small businesses are underserved populations. Last year, we put on 863 workshops and training programs for small businesses with about 18,000 attendees across the Commonwealth. And the total impact, and that's impact through direct impact from success that companies have achieved was about $2 billion. And some of you may not be familiar with the fact that the Community Business Partnership in Springfield is all staffed by Mason employees, and we now run a CDFI. We received that designation about 2 months ago. Next slide, please. So we have a mission where we are very quickly moving towards building an inclusive ecosystem for entrepreneurs. There are many great assets in Virginia, and we are trying to be a good partner and also connect with those assets and play the role that we know universities can do and that Mason has for a long time. I mean, Mason's been running an incubator in partnership with the city of Fairfax since 1995. That's back before incubators were cool. So that's a pretty big deal. All of our companies together that sit in our incubators are about 400 within the communities where they sit. Next slide, please. So this is what we're aiming for, is to provide access to these types of services for entrepreneurs in the Commonwealth. And these are both traditional types of businesses and tech startups. We serve both, and we bridge the gap between inside the university and outside the university. So right now, Mason is the largest producer of talent in the Commonwealth. And we have been designated as the fastest growing research university in the country by NSF Herd data. What's following that is our invention disclosures have been tracking along with that. So we see a lot of tech coming down the pipeline, and we need to be able to accommodate it. We hit the capital resource in the area where the fact that we have a CDFI, but we're looking at how to leverage that through the Community Business Partnership. You know, our staff runs a CDFI. How do we leverage that in a bigger way? And then also on the venture side, because we're a new R1 research institution. Those that have been around for a while have venture funds. Mason will be starting a venture fund as well to support its technologies. Facilities, of course, we have facilities inside and outside the university and the force of our Mason Enterprise Centers. The business advice is the strength of the programs that I talked about earlier. Technical support is there. We're working hard to make sure that we are connecting the inside and the outside so that small businesses especially have access to technical resources at universities, something that's not always easy to streamline. And we have a number of programs that we're working on right now to make that happen. And then access to customers is critical. So while, especially when we talk about tech, the reality is that 5% of all tech companies will get venture capital, but 100% of them need revenue, right? So we're focused on helping those connect customers with our early stage tech companies. Next slide, please. This is a diagram that I used right before I came to Mason. I was a PI on a grant for NIST, where we looked at the top 59 public research universities in the country and identified what those best practices looked like and where the gaps were. And there's a belief that federal research pours into the top of the university like a giant funnel, and technologies and tech startups magically come out the bottom of that funnel, and a lot of magic happens in the middle. But the reality is that the magic requires a lot of work and funding to make that happen, and a lot of programs. And so those gaps that you see across the bottom, we are systematically checking off as we develop programs. And I'll talk a minute about what some of those programs look like. And really what we want researchers to do is to be serial innovators. We're not looking for researchers to become CEOs, although sometimes it happens, and that's great when it does. But for the most part, it's typically grad students and doctoral students that will take a company out. And we're putting a lot of emphasis around support for both the researchers and the students to be able to make that happen in a more systematic way. Next slide, please. So our 2021 critical activities, and we're closing in the end of the year, and I'm happy to say we will hit most of these. We have one that's a little bit slow rolling due to construction delays, But we did increase the Office of Tech Transfer. We doubled in size to be able to accommodate our pipeline of technologies. Historically, Mason has commercialized a lot of in the biotech field, especially for in the diagnostic space, but and we see that continue to grow, but digital innovation is taking off so fast, and especially in the cybersecurity area. And Mason was the first university in the country to offer a cybersecurity degree, data management degree, and cloud computing degree. And those are starting to pay off now in the forms of technologies that we see in the pipeline that are ready to be commercialized or will be soon. We launched a makerspace in Fairfax. It was supported with state funds a while ago, so it was something that we inherited. And COVID gave us a little bit of time to really think through carefully how to engage with the community. And I'm happy to say Building Momentum is a good partner with us. And we did last week was a drone building and demonstration that Building Momentum provided in the makerspace, which we call the Mix. We launched our first investor event. We welcomed all of the universities in the Commonwealth to participate. We had a lot of great partners on this. And we also ran a student competition as well, which ended up being, we thought it was going to be a small part of the competition, and it ended up being a highlight. We gave away cash prizes. And again, Fairfax County was a good partner and supporter in that. We had investors from 8 states attend, and we had about 300 people in person. It was a little scary doing our first in-person event, but it came off well. We're working on an innovation district roadmap that was part of the Amazon package. And in that we're looking at what an innovation district looks like, not just around the Arlington campus, but how that pulls through the Fairfax and the Prince William campuses as well. That report is due in 14 days, and it'll be delivered, and then we'll do a little bit of a roadshow over December and January on and to get input and execution for that roadmap. And then we are in the process of launching an ICAP, SBDC ICAP Tech Mentor Team. This is similar to 20 states have a tech team associated with their SBDC. Virginia didn't, but now we do. We've made offers to 2 people. We're hiring 6 more in the process, and we're pretty excited to get this launched. What this means is that every tech company will have access to no-cost counseling from an experienced entrepreneur in different disciplines. And then launching the Arlington Accelerator, which is the one that's stay tuned on that one. Construction delays have prevailed, but we're probably looking at a January versus December launch. Next slide, please. So what are we looking for in 2022? We're headed towards, if you haven't seen President Washington talk about his Virginia Promise, what the Virginia Promise is that every Virginian will have access to support to starting a business or to an advanced degree. So I'm starting the business part. Mark Austin, my colleague at Mason, is the advanced degree part, and he works on badging and certification and upskilling for all of our tech jobs that are available. So right now, I would say on the traditional business side, we 100% check that box for helping Virginians start businesses. On the tech side, we do a great job, but we have a lot more to do, and keeping up with this fast-growing economy is going to be a critical part of that. I mentioned the Innovation District Corridor planning and execution. That won't all happen in 2022. The beginning of it is in 2022. Regional entrepreneurship convening and working with Go Virginia's Region 7, and stay tuned for more on that. But we're excited to identify opportunities to work together more closely and connect the assets in Northern Virginia. The expansion of an Accelerator investor event. So last year, or this year, actually a few weeks ago, was our inaugural event. And we'll be doing, we kept it intentionally a little bit small due to COVID. 300 people was small. We'll be expanding it next year. And so we're looking at, put it on your calendars, please, November 2nd and 3rd of 2023. The Coulter model is a best practice in national lab to market expertise. Virginia Tech runs it in biomedical engineering. Mason will be launching a Coulter model, and this involves industry and investors in lab to market activities at the university, and it will be centered around our three research institutes: the Institute for Digital Innovation, the Institute for Sustainable Earth, and the Institute for Biohealth Innovations. And then finally, a first customer program, because we see that as a market gap right now, and I've built one successfully in the past, and I'm excited to launch one here in Virginia. So the last two bullets were two of the gaps that were identified in that graphic I showed you earlier for access for early stage companies. Next slide. Oh, and that's my last slide. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat if you don't have it, if you have any thoughts, or would just like to reach out and connect or find out more about what Mason's working on. I'd be happy to do that. And I think now we're doing Q&A.
Thank you so much, Paula. Excellent presentation. You guys are doing great work. I am going to ask Rebecca if she would manage the question session and encourage everybody who has questions for the speakers or just has comments that they want to share with the entire commission relative to the topics we've covered this morning. Please take advantage of this opportunity. Rebecca?
Yeah, amazing presentations and information. So first, Stephen Keat has his hand raised. Please go ahead, Stephen.
Yes, thank you. As some of you will know, I'm a retired diplomat, and I was involved with economic and commercial issues. So the first presentation, when you touched on the implementation of an international trade plan, that drew my attention. If you could speak a little bit further about what is actually being done on this, and also if you could address in what ways the EAC could be helpful.
Yeah, thanks for the good question. So big picture, over the course of more than a year in the 2019 timeframe, VDP worked with a number of partners within state government as well as external partners to put together Governor Northam's International Trade Plan. And it basically involves three sets of initiatives that are all geared around increasing the export intensity of Virginia's economy. Virginia outperforms in a number of areas of economic performance, but actually our export intensity is in the bottom half of states, meaning export intensity, meaning how important are exports and how relevant are exports pound for pound in Virginia's total economy. So the plan outlines a set of initiatives to dramatically increase the export intensity and sort of international integration of Virginia's economy. Three big buckets of activity that it calls for. One is expanding the export assistance programs that the state already provides. They're very well regarded. They're oversubscribed. Secondly, to invest in the capabilities we need to attract business investments that are likely to have a strong export orientation, particularly manufacturing segments that are that have a high degree of export orientation. Think about things like auto, semiconductors, and so forth. And then finally, investments in the fundamental infrastructure that facilitates international trade. Think about hard infrastructure, including the port, but also sort of the soft infrastructure around fully leveraging trade zones and so forth. So we've made good progress on implementing the international trade plan. There's a lot more that needs to go. It's basically a 15-year plan, so it provides a long time horizon with a total of more than 20 initiatives geared around capturing the opportunity that I just described. And there's some information about it online, and my contact information is in the presentation. And if you would like some material that describes it in greater detail, I'd be happy to provide that to you and others.
Would there be a role for the EAC?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think there absolutely is. I mean, I think part of the role is, you know, an immediate opportunity would be to help connect companies and entrepreneurs based in Fairfax County and elsewhere with some of our team members who can provide assistance for folks who are looking to export internationally for the first time, or for folks who are looking to export to regions of the world where they are not yet you know, where they are not yet active. And so that's an immediate opportunity. I would also add that you know, we're working every day with you know, the Fairfax County EDA and others to identify business investments and to help existing businesses expand. In many cases, these are folks who will have a contribution to make to Virginia's export volumes, just given the nature of their businesses. And so I think, you know, a lot of that is happening already, but there's certainly opportunities to, you know, put more target on, you know, to do more to target firms that have an export orientation, and also to connect businesses with services that will help them engage in international trade. So those are the two of the big ones. And I know some of our partners on the ground in Fairfax and Northern Virginia probably have some other suggestions there as well. So just take that as kind of my initial thoughts on how to collaborate.
Thank you.
Thanks,
welcome.
Jason. And one thing that we can do, just so everyone's aware, Jason and Paula's presentation are posted, and we'll resend out the link so you have easy access to those presentations. And we can also send out, as a follow-up, information about the Export Assistance Centers, as in case you do know firms that should be connected or like to learn more about those. So the whole EAC has that. So we're going to go Esther, Terry, and then Eileen and James have a question in the chat. So that'll be our order. So Esther, please go ahead.
Thanks, Rebecca. Esther Lee with Refraction. Paula, great job on your presentation, and welcome to Virginia. In a short amount of time, she's done amazing things already in our region, and we're lucky to have you and your experience here in the region. So Jason, congratulations on all that VEDP has done in the last few years to bring obviously large companies like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, and those jobs to our Commonwealth. And we're all sad that your boss, CEO, Stephen Moray, is leaving, unfortunately. Can you give us a preview of what changes, or how things may change in terms of the VEDP's focus under the new governor coming in? And maybe you can't share too much, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts might be. And then two, what kinds of efforts are you doing to attract more high growth businesses and startups? For example, Fiscal Note in DC is now a unicorn and about to go public. And so not necessarily that company, but companies like them that are growing fast and creating jobs. What's your strategy to attract those kinds of companies to the Commonwealth?
Yeah, great questions, and so good to see you. Thanks, Esther. So in terms of what we can expect in the transition, including the transition to a new gubernatorial administration, you know, all signals I'm receiving so far are, you know, sort of an acceleration of many of the things that we're already doing. My sense is that the overall strategy for economic development for the Commonwealth, and the ways that the strategy connects to the economic development needs and opportunities of the different regions, that strategy has been widely embraced. In terms of the goals that it lays out, in terms of the initiatives that are outlined to achieve those goals. So there's, you know, a lot of support there, and understanding, and momentum. We had an opportunity to brief the governor-elect before the election, and so he has, you know, during the campaign expressed a great amount of interest in VEDP and the initiatives of the entire economic development community in Virginia. Just yesterday, Governor-elect Youngkin did a briefing with our entire staff at VEDP, emphasized that economic development and job creation are square in the bullseye of what he and his administration intend to do. He expressed a desire and a commitment to be very personally involved and available. He also expressed a tremendous degree of support for many of the big initiatives that we believe it will take to get to the next level, including investments in site development, investments in marketing, investments in other sort of tactical elements of economic development. So I think what we can expect is a governor for the next 4 years who will put economic development at the top of his agenda, who will be a good and collaborative partner to us in the economic development community, and also somebody who will set very ambitious goals. Governor-elect Youngkin has basically said that his goal is to create 400,000 jobs over the course of his 4 years as governor. That's 100,000 jobs per year, as Terry Clower and you, Esther, will know that those are big numbers. I'm looking at Kathy Riley smiling right now as well. So we're going to need to fire on all cylinders. I've also heard Governor-elect Youngkin talk about the importance of entrepreneurship and early stage companies, startups, which is really the second part of your question. And what's the strategy there? Well, one of the things that you guys should know is that VEDP, the organization I represent, is one of the important economic development entities at the state level, but there are other entities that also have significant economic development functions, including CIT, which is in this sort of rebranding stage right now, the Virginia Innovation Partnership Authority. Virginia tends to put most of its support and responsibility for early stage, high growth potential company cultivation in that organization. And so I think what we'll see is sort of the early stage tactics largely falling into that kind of administrative apparatus through CIT and VIPA. As those companies scale up, as they get capitalized, as they become companies that can make the kinds of job creation potential and the risk profile that fits our strike zone at VDP, I think we'll see a handoff in that respect. And so, some of the things that I highlighted in my presentation earlier describe some of the sectors that we think are ripest from a emerging technology cultivation perspective, and that's where we're putting a lot of our proactive focus. But obviously we're also somewhat opportunistic, and as we see different technologies and different enterprises scale up and look to make big job creation commitments as they scale, that's something that we're paying close attention to as well.
Thanks so much. Great insights.
Yeah, Esther,
So-
did I hit the various elements of your question?
Yes, I was going to say CIT is doing a great job, but they don't offer incentives for jobs as you all do. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, one of the things, and many of you will appreciate this, is historically the Commonwealth has been very risk averse with respect to incentives, and that often makes it somewhat of a challenge to find a way to provide strong incentive offers to early stage companies that are not yet well capitalized and established.
So we're going to move on. We're going to go Terry and Eileen and James, and then probably have to do a quick time check after those three questions. Go ahead, Terry.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. Good to see you, Jason, as always. Quick thing, and just a little context for the committee as much as any. Jason was talking about the job losses that we experienced, but there's a little nuance in Northern Virginia I think you should be aware of that speaks much to our economic strengths and even some of our challenges. The professional business services sector is very broad. It includes anything from computer programmers, lawyers, engineers, to janitors and people who run personnel agencies. When you separate that professional and technical from the administrative and waste management, just focusing on professional and technical, Northern Virginia had net job growth every month throughout the entire pandemic. We continue to create net new jobs in professional technical services. And that was, and of course, and that's part of our strength, and that's what has allowed us to continue on. And I'm going to get to a question for you, Jason, here in just a second, but I think that's really important. But there's also a little bit of dimension. You were comparing, a short-term outlook and, looking in 2022 as recovery. I actually think, from a gross regional product, I can see that very much from Northern Virginia recovering that quickly. I think our job growth is going to be a little slower recovering for two perspectives. One is we're still hammered somewhat by, in our leisure and hospitality sector, by lower business travel. And that lower, in businesses sending people out for in-truck company meetings, things like that, it's likely going to stay pretty slow for a while. And the fact that we simply have our skills mismatch. We have thousands upon thousands, as you well know, of jobs open in this region, and we just don't have the right people. Some work that Go Virginia sponsored that Jonathan Aberman and I did last year, we were looking at that skills mismatch and just thinking, can we reskill these leisure hospitality workers into that? And we learned something very important. It's not nearly that simple. And what our employers in Northern Virginia are telling us is that we need folks who will have a cultural fit inside a tech industry. And that's led, and maybe Eileen will speak to it, to a new initiative that they're underwriting for a program that Jonathan is going to run out of Marymount. I'm going to assist him with it, that basically will look at getting people ready for the workplace to go along with their skills they're learning. However, the big thing any employer up here is going to tell you, Jason, and you've heard it, you've probably been pounded about the head and shoulders on it, we need more workers with those tech skills. Where is BDP fitting within our efforts to attract and retain the talent that we do have, but attract new talent in? So we have the partnership, the Economic Development Alliance up here, who certainly are working on that. But what are you guys doing at the state level to help us be better prepared to attract talent from elsewhere, or to retain it to keep our workers from basically living on the beach?
Yeah, it's a great question, Terry. I will say that there have been a few things that the governor-elect has said that makes me think that that's might be a focus there. But I'll say that, and this is something that we've thought about a lot. It tends to be this question of how do you attract and retain workers. It tends to be a question that when you just sort of look at the way the way individual workers make decisions, they're tending to choose communities as much as they are choosing a state. So I would say that the answer to the question is kind of highly dependent on initiatives that are led within an individual community or within a region, because that's really where you have the sort of connective tissue and boots on the ground, if you will, to actually do something that would be directly relevant to an individual that's living and working in a place, rather than trying to sort of somehow shape that experience from Richmond. Now, one of the things we have looked at is whether we should use some sort of state level incentive program to help attract workers, and one of the things that we've looked at recently is the notion of folks who might be somewhat untethered geographically because of the shift to telework. And what we found there is that programs that basically provide some sort of financial incentive for folks to move have not been very effective. And frankly, when you look at kind of the ROI of those programs, there's a lot of other things that you could do that have higher ROI and that would be more meaningful to to attracting those kinds of folks. So this is one of those questions where I don't really have like a kind of a succinct, easy answer, but I think the answer tends to be one where I think that the state is very much in partnership, as we are in many things, with local communities and regions who have a particular vision for how they can catalyze some of these opportunities. This is not exactly your question, but it is very relevant. The $1.1 billion investment program that we're making through the tech talent investment is going to double the production of master's and bachelor's degrees in computer science and related fields in Virginia through public universities across the Commonwealth, including, you know, the biggest players in Northern Virginia, including your institution, Terry. And I think, you know, that's not, you know, those are not sort of existing workers, if you will, although some of those students will be existing workers who are sort of retraining, if you will. But I do think that the pipeline of talent that is directly related to the growth opportunities that we're seeing in our economy is one of the single biggest things we can do at the state level. It's arguably the single biggest thing, and that's something where we've put a tremendous amount of energy. So I would just offer that as an important complement to what we can do in partnership to attract and retain folks who are already in the workforce.
Thanks, Jason. So I'm going to move on to a question that Eileen had posted in the chat. Let me just find it here. This is to Paula. Paula, could you talk a little more about the innovation district development and ways other sectors of the county, like private sector or philanthropy, could plug into that?
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time looking at innovation districts, and I had worked in the past on the Detroit Innovation District, but there are a lot of the examples that are much larger, not just around the country, but around the world. If you've been to Barcelona, for example, and right now Heathrow Airport is developing an innovation district around what they're working on. This requires critical assets. And so there are a couple things that with the development of an innovation district is they're almost always anchored by universities. And we have several of them in Northern Virginia now, which is fantastic. They also heavily involve private sector and public sector partners. There's no way that one entity or group of entities can really participate. Some of the programming that we're working on, and they are typically focused on solving the really big problems. That's why I'm excited about, Mason, whoever, the people who came before me were pretty brilliant in setting up the 3 research institutes on digital innovation, biohealth innovation, and sustainable earth. And they were important at the time they were set up, but now you can see that how they've increased in importance as big topics, big problems to solve. And our proximity to the federal government is especially critical in being able to bring them in as partners and solve those big problems as we move forward. So some of the programming examples I gave earlier, like Coulter Model, what Coulter Model does is it brings in people who sit on, for example, foundations that support health issues. It brings in investors and venture capitalists, angel investors, and corporations that are interested in those commercial technologies. And they all sit at the table to say, yes, university, this research has huge value. There's a market for it. This is how you should structure this. This is how you should move this forward, and to provide that type of advice. So that's at the very small level. At the larger level, we talk about each of the 3 Mason campuses having its own innovation district, because all of those campuses are expanding. The trend right now in university enrollment is, I heard a number the other day, is down 7%. Mason is up 2% in university enrollment. There are a lot of reasons for that, because it's a good value, because we have degrees that were developed directly in partnership with industry, so that we can fill those jobs. That most of the talent that comes to Mason gets their degree here stays here in the region, which is also kind of unusual for a university. So all of those things add up to the partnerships that develop around each of those campuses, and we're seeing campus expansion in every case. We refer to the 3 campuses themselves as an innovation corridor. And you can think about all the partners that exist in the innovation corridor. There are lots of companies, there are lots of private sector organizations. And For those of us that have worked in economic development a long time, there are two things that are true. One is that nobody goes into economic development wanting to move the needle a little bit. And two is that there are some things that the private sector just doesn't fund. They just won't. It doesn't fit in. It never has. And where the public sector needs to step in, and foundations step in. And there are good examples of that from all over the country. And we're always looking at best practices and adopting best practices, but we also have seen a lot too, and know what works. Heavy focus on return on investment for the taxpayers in Virginia.
So I think that to sum that up, Paula, the answer is yes. Engagement, you're open to engagement, and more to come.
Yes, much more to come. Also, there was a question about where the Arlington incubator is. So part of the Amazon expansion is a 4,000 square foot facility on Fairfax Boulevard, connected to Mason's campus. The pilot space I'm sitting in right now, it's the 5G test bed, the home of the Northern Virginia node of the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative, and the Cybersecurity Manufacturing Institute that's funded by DOE. That is the pilot space. We also have an incubator and education space that's currently under construction. That's a floor below us in the lobby.
So Supervisor Fast, I think I'm gonna turn it over. If it's okay, we're running a little short on time, but I know we still have questions from James, Phil, Brian, Taylor, and Terry. If it's okay, Paula and Jason, if we could steal a little bit of your time after this meeting to maybe gather your responses in written form so we can respond back after the meeting to the group.
It sounds great to me. I'm actually in the chat now trying to do that in real time. So
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Such a pleasure to be with all of you, Mr. Chairman and members, and all of my friends and partners. Really enjoyed the conversation today.
Well, we are indebted. That was really an awesome presentation by both of you. You're so full of really important, relevant information. We so appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, and we look forward to working with both of you going forward. And one of the things we will talk about next is working going forward. And Rebecca and her team have done, they've showed tremendous initiative, in my opinion, of thinking through, how best take advantage of this amazing talent that we have on the Economic Advisory Commission, and how we might set some goals, identify some priorities for our activities, and come up with a procedure basically for getting input and direction from all of you. And so Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can talk about your survey and next steps.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. I think that, it's a great kind of segue to have those big picture topics presented to us, and for us to really start thinking about kind of what's next for our economy and how we can engage, how you all can engage as a commission to that, to do that. So I'm really excited for the discussion today. And thanks to all of you that participated in our recent survey. So I've, over the last couple of months, had the opportunity to start to chat with some of the EAC members, and have really learned that many of you are eager to participate in a more robust fashion. And I think that our survey really reflected that. We received several comments like, we'd really like to be fully utilized, set more time aside for discussion and brainstorming. It'd be helpful to create opportunities for feedback and input. And we couldn't agree more. So if we could go to the next slide, just really quick, what we're going to go over today. So the purpose of the survey and kind of this discussion right now is to understand the areas that EAC members are most interested and prepared to engage in, put together a structure to best meet the mandate of the Economic Advisory Commission, which, as you can see here, is to provide policy level recommendations on matters related to the development and growth of the county's economy. So today we'll quickly look at the survey findings. I will propose an EAC meeting structure that we've discussed with Chairman Faust. And then in order to help us move forward and better understand the more detailed topics of interest, we'll go through a series of polls, kind of live polls. You may have done these in Zoom meetings before, to start to gather more feedback and whittle us down into a series of clear topics that the EAC will review next year. So on the next slide, you can see our first question in the survey was about the experience of the EAC. Just real quick, I know that the text there is small, but the finding is the experience is deep and wide ranging. The purpose of this question was to help us to connect the topics that we may work on with the expertise of the commission. And I really believe that we're going to do that. If you can't see the text there, most folks, or many, almost half of the respondents noted that they have experience in economic development, which is of course relevant here. So the next slide goes into the topics. So we presented 14 topics and asked you to identify the 3 that you were most interested in exploring in 2022. So I realized that there were some overlaps in the topics, so it was perhaps a little bit difficult to choose just 3. I appreciate many of you mostly sticking with the plan to select 3. And here you can see the rankings that we categorized into kind of 4 broad areas: growing talent and economic success. So there in that top line, you see that workforce development emerged as a top area of interest. In fact, 20 or half of all the respondents selected that as a priority. The next category is creating places where businesses thrive. In this category, business district revitalization received as many hits as workforce development. So 20 responses, or half of all respondents, identified that as a priority. The next category is supporting business development. This is clearly an area of interest, with entrepreneurship and new business development receiving several votes. And the final kind of category that we put together was fomenting innovation, and technology development and innovation received the 3rd most interest out of all 14 of the options. So I think what's important is that all of these topics are of interest. They're all important, but we're trying to kind of bring into focus the areas that the EAC may be most interested and most prepared to engage on. We also asked our Board of Supervisors, the elected officials who sit on this, on the Economic Advisory Commission, for their priorities. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see this is just an aggregate look. So each one of these checks indicates that 1 or more supervisors indicated that topic as a priority. So what we see, what we wanted to make sure is that there was general alignment, that there wasn't a topic that the EAC thought was important and the board maybe didn't have the same view, but I think that we're moving towards a similar direction. If we go to the next slide, we also asked survey respondents to identify any other topics that they thought were important, and these were the write-in topics. I think that, and I hope that you all take a look at these, because in a minute we're going to open this up for discussion to help learn more about the specifics within each one of these kind of broad themes. So I think that some of these write-in topics do align with the other themes that were presented in the survey, or could be considered subtopics of those larger survey themes. And if we go to the next slide, just kind of moving right along here. So as we saw in the bar chart, these are the top 4 categories with the most interest, the bulleted items here. So our next step is begin to narrow these down and ultimately select 2 topics for the EAC to dig into next year. So in a few minutes, as I mentioned, we're going to launch some polls to try to solicit a little bit more feedback to help us in that process. One of the other questions that we asked in the survey was, are you open to participating or interested in participating in a working session? So outside of an EAC meeting, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, kind of a working session to dig in to one of the selected topics. So most people responded, yes, they are interested. A few people responded that they may be interested depending on what that is and what the timing of that would require. So if we move on, I will talk a little bit about our proposed structure. So we are proposing that there are 2 full Economic Advisory Commission meetings in 2022. So 1 prioritized topic at each meeting. The first full EAC meeting is already scheduled. It is March 29th at 3:00 p.m. I just want to note that meeting, as of right now, it will likely be in person. So everyone just, we'll get prepared for that. So in advance of that first full EAC meeting, we are proposing a working session on 1 prioritized topic, which is what we're moving towards. This will probably be about an hour and a half or 2 hours long. It will be facilitated and it will include some advanced work for those that volunteer to participate in that working session. For those EAC members that volunteer to participate in that working session. That advanced work will probably include working with our team, with county staff, to finalize a challenge statement or a problem statement that will help us to clarify, our focus for that working session. We will also likely be preparing for you advanced materials for preparation so that we come in and we can have a very productive working session that will lead us to a final either recommendation or topic for the full EAC to consider. Just a quick note that these working sessions will be voluntary. So we will finalize the topics. We will let the EAC know what those topics are, and those who are interested, who would like to participate in that, can come forth and be part of that working session. You are not obligated to participate, but we hope if you do volunteer that you are prepared to work as part of the working session and engage in some limited advanced work, as I mentioned. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see kind of the rundown of what this might look like. So over the next month or so, we're going to take all the feedback that we receive to narrow down the topics and select 2 topics for 2022. We will let all of you know what those topics are. We're going to be working with Supervisor Faust on finalizing those. We'll let all of the EAC members know what those are. We will set the schedule for the first working session, which will likely be in February, as you see. And we will begin to recruit the interested EAC members for that first working session. Early in the year, next year, we'll engage with the working session participants on putting together kind of that challenge statement. So we're all on the same page and moving in the same direction about what it is that we're going to tackle, as well as how we're going to tackle it. We will prepare any advanced materials. We will hold the working session at least a month in advance of the full EAC meeting. And we will develop the challenge statements and we'll finalize kind of the policy response that will then go to the full EAC meeting, as I mentioned, which will be March 29th. And at that EAC meeting, that will be a time where, again, all of the supervisors who are available participate. It'll be a full EAC meeting. That will be a time to really discuss and deliberate the working session kind of output and consider the next steps. So we do have a series of polls to launch to dig in a little bit to the meeting, to the specific topics. So I'm going to go ahead and launch those. There's 4, and we're going to see if we can do them relatively quickly. Again, this is part of our feedback feedback piece. And then we'll have a discussion and answer questions and take feedback on the topics, but also the proposed structure. So thank you very much. I know this is kind of a lot of content coming at you. But I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll, this first one. This is the business revitalization, business district revitalization. And I hope that you have seen this launch. And the first, you can see the question is, what is the most important issue within business district revitalization or placemaking the EAC should consider? So please go ahead and respond. And while you're responding, I want to thank my colleagues who helped me put together this set of questions.
The compliance of that agreement, or those phases and how that will be funded, to understand what needs to be in the agreement with the city. So.
Okay, we're going to leave it open for probably one more minute. If you could select your response, please. And as you can see, one of the options is if there's another topic related to business district revitalization that you'd like the EAC to consider, please go ahead and put that down in the chat. Okay. I am going to go ahead and end that poll, and I will share the results really quick because I always think it's interesting. So out of this option, business district revitalization, we see that, let's see, most folks, or the one that received the most votes is at 35% is placemaking activities or events for space activation and public realm improvements. Thank you very much for your participation in that. I'm going to go ahead and launch the next poll. And this poll is focused on, let me pull it down, technology development and innovation. What we just heard Paula talk about. So the question is, what is the most important technology development and innovation item the EAC should consider? So please select your response now. Hopefully it's gone live. And I should have mentioned before that if you don't feel, if you have no opinion or you're not, this is a topic that you don't feel you're experienced in, you of course do not need to respond to the poll. Okay, I'm going to leave it open for about, I don't know, 30 more seconds. Okay, I am going to close this poll and share the results. And let's see, what do we find here? So a lot of interest. It looks like we have a tie here with 29% of those who responded are interested in facilitating financing and growth capital. And another 29% are interested in mentorship for new tech entrepreneurs and companies. Fantastic. All right, we're going to move on to our third poll. And this is on entrepreneurship and new business establishment. So here it goes. Okay, just a couple more seconds on this one, please. You could get your responses in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this one and share the results. So here we see another tie. We see professional services to help entrepreneurs grow their business and supporting infrastructure to grow small businesses as a tie. I am going to really click. We're going to do our last poll on workforce development because I know that there's a lot of interest in workforce development. So I'm going to launch that if we could get your input. And I want to highlight that this question on workforce development is from the employer perspective. So please respond to this considering the employer perspective, which is probably a little bit different from the worker perspective, but we kind of wanted to keep this in a narrowed focus since there's workforce development is such a large topic. Okay, I am going to end this in just a couple of seconds. If everyone could get their comments in or their choices in. Okay, and here what we see, there's a lot of support for helping firms to establish an apprenticeship program and addressing gaps in worker training and preparation. Great. Okay, so thanks everyone for that information. Again, we're taking all of this in. This is going to be useful for us as we start to consider the most appropriate topics for next year. I realize we just have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to open it up for questions. I know I put a lot out there in terms of topics and structure, so please ask questions. You can always put them in the chat, and of course, contact us at any time for other feedback or questions. So, any questions out there? Oh, I think Esther, you had your hand up. Sorry, I thought that was a thumbs up with the hand up.
Thumbs up as well. Rebecca, that was great. I just wanted to alert you that under innovation and under entrepreneurship, you saw similar things get the most votes, providing mentorship, capital, and the infrastructure to help grow businesses. So you may consider, but I don't know if this makes it more difficult or simplify things, but you may consider having that under one working session. And I think they're intricately tied.
Thank you. Yes, excellent point. Stephen?
Just a quick comment and suggestion that when we have meetings in person, which I think is an excellent thing to hopefully be able to move back to, that we also have a Zoom option for those who for one reason or the other can't make it. One of the few good things about the pandemic is that it's opened up other opportunities for how to interact. So if you have somebody who's traveling or just can't make the full session, but could make part of it, giving them a Zoom option would strike me as a good idea.
Thanks. Thanks for that feedback. Terry?
Yeah, just a couple of things, Rebecca, is if we're looking at things that we wind up making recommendations on policy, then I think that shifts a little bit of some of our focus, because I don't think Fairfax County is going to get in the business of actually providing seed capital to businesses or being a venture capital operation. But I was thinking in terms of things like we've had great success in doing demonstrations projects on autonomous vehicles, which I think helps us even in talent attraction at some point. But maybe it's that exploration of policy, the county policy efforts. And then, of course, let me raise the one, and I'll quickly shut down just in case there's any barbs thrown, is, things like the structure of BPOL and its impact on where entrepreneurs decide to set up their business in this region, because we have competitors that don't do that. So I think that those are some that we need to think in terms, and some of this on recommendations we can make to the supervisors on tax structure, and other policies actually relevant for local government to be engaged in that would make us more competitive.
Amen, Terry.
Thank you. Supervisor Harity, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to echo that. And I put something in the chat talking about really we need to focus on how, not just providing the information on how to start a business, but we really need to look at how to make starting a business easier and less complicated, not just provide information about how complicated it is. And I would say the same thing, it should be policy wise. BPOL is, one of the things we could look to do is startup companies giving relief in early years to something that taxes you on revenue, but not on profit. But I think there's a lot of policy things to do. I saw a lot in there about things that were, actually, I believe the purview of the private sector, which is, funding companies that, we should support that with policy guidelines, but I don't think we should be making those kind of decisions. So I just wanted to echo what Terry was saying. And I think there's a lot of policy stuff that can get done to make it easier and create that culture here.
So one question, Rebecca. One of the things I haven't heard yet, and I'm curious how this fits in and what the thinking is behind this. So early on in coming into the market, I heard a lot about an interest in diversifying the economy and hence the emphasis on tech. So as we talk about businesses and the traditional types of businesses that we see starting, I know a lot of the companies that are within our Mason Enterprise Centers, for example, are government contracting businesses or related to government in some way. Is there any particular focus on that diversification piece as we talk about new company development, technology development, and company support?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take your comment as a potential topic to consider, if that's okay. So we've noted all of this down, and we're going to put all of this back in the mix to kind of like move us forward to really focus on what the EAC is going to be looking at, as well as I'd say the level. So thank you for those points about kind of policy versus program. So we're looking at all of this and appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Faust now, since we are just a little over 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I guess, please, if you have thoughts that you were unable to communicate today due to lack of time or whatever, thoughts that come to you after the meeting about the process, this is obviously a pretty significant departure for us from how we've operated in the past. And I think it is a very, potentially very good improvement. And again, I want to thank Rebecca and her team for spending a lot of time thinking and working on this and coming up with, I think, a pretty good proposal. But please, so I'm sure there's many on this phone call who've been through similar efforts in the past who could tell us, share some of your experiences. Contact Rebecca or myself at any time, and we'll be getting back. Rebecca laid out kind of the chronology of how we hope to move forward. So unless someone has anything that we need to hear today, I'm going to, anybody out there? I'm going to thank you so much. Thank you to our speakers. Excellent presentations, great topics. Thank you to staff for pulling together a great meeting, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.